All right, peeps. So we are going to complete a lab with resistance and Ohm's law. So before we actually put things together, we gotta make sure that we have the correct check boxes checked. So you show current, yep, but we're gonna do conventional current. We'll talk about the difference between these later. And then show labels, awesome. And so our first circuit really just has that battery and some wires. And we're going to put a light bulb in here. If you want a switch in there, feel free, put in a switch, but you don't have to have it for this lab. And then we're just going to connect everything here. So here's our first circuit. Yeah, what you're going to do for the first part of the lab is test out conductors and insulators. And so you're going to use these different objects that are listed down here, like a dollar bill, paperclip, coin, all that stuff, and connect those things into the circuit. And so you could do that just by clipping them in here and connecting this. And what you just want to look for is current flowing, or is it not flowing, or is it not flowing very much at all? And you'll end up sorting out the difference between conductors and insulators. Okay? So that's the first part. The second part asks you to put something in here called a resistor. And there's a or sorry, not the second part. The boop, 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 boop. Oh yeah, part two. Part two asks you to put in this thing called a resistor. It has these colored bands on them. And then you're going to be measuring voltage and current, just like how they show you in these pictures. Let me just quick show you that. So there's two different resistors. There's this resistor that has the squiggly lines in there. And there's this resistor that has the bands. We're going to use this one just for now. And when you connect it to the circuit, the current will flow. But when you measure a voltage, what we're going to do is measure voltage across the resistor. So when it says across the resistor, instead of measuring on the battery, we're measuring on the resistor itself. So one lead goes on one side of the resistor, the other lead goes on the other side of the resistor. When you do that, it should show you the voltage. Now you might end up with negative voltages when you measure. That's okay. Don't worry about it. So really it just means that you get the same number if you switch these around. Remember, current flows from positive to negative. So you have to have the positive on the correct side, facing the positive side of the battery, negative facing the negative side of the battery. And that's kind of the difference between them. But then you also need to measure current. The way that you measure current is using this ammeter. So you got to grab that. But this doesn't have leads that you connect in. Instead, you connect it directly into the circuit. So you have to create a break. And then you can put ammeter into the circuit, and it will measure out the current for you. You could leave this setup that measures out the current and the voltage throughout the rest of the lab, and then there'll be a part where but you'll use these to calculate the resistance of the circuit or resistance of the resistor itself, and you should be able to do that. Then there's a part so we're kind of skipping through some parts, like here. Part 5, you're going to calculate that resistance. When you get to part 3, it's asking you to now change the resistance of that resistor to a specific value, and you can use that to measure the current. But when you click on this, it'll show up with a menu down here, and it'll allow you to change the resistance. You're doing a couple things. You want to check out what's happening to the brightness of the bulb, and it's when you change this. But then you also want to check out what's happening to the voltage when you change this, and make it bigger and smaller. You also want to check out what's happening to the current when you're changing this, making it bigger or smaller. And we want to kind of draw some connections of when you end up having a larger resistance, what's happening to the brightness of the bulb, what's happening to the voltage, what's happening to the current. When you make the resistance small, what's happening to the brightness of the bulb, what's happening to the voltage, what's happening to the current. And then you'll end up being able to slide this around, and you're going to end up with 100 ohms here at the end that you're going to need to measure the current and the voltage for. And that's kind of the gist of it. Okay? So that's the lab. Let your teacher know if you have any questions. And if you need to kind of just get a refresher, come on back to this. And yeah, you should be good. All right. See you guys in a little bit.